You felt it before you understood it. There has always been something different about the way your mind moves. Quieter, deeper, sharper. You are not ordinary. You never have been. While others react, you reflect. While the world panics, you perceive. While darkness shouts, something inside you listens. And that listening, it has set you apart. Have you ever wondered why your thoughts feel heavier than the room you're standing in? Why conversations feel shallow when your mind is swimming in oceans? Why you cannot think the way the crowd thinks even when you try? It is not arrogance. It is not isolation. It is design. Chosen one, your mind is not just a processor, it is a portal. There are 9 signs of divine thought implantation. 9 confirmations that what moves through you did not originate from the noise of culture, but from a higher source. Not everyone will understand this. Only the chosen recognize this frequency. If this resonates, if something in your spirit is already stirring, stay locked in. This message will not find everyone, but it found you, and that is not random. Lean in. Listen carefully. First, you think in revelations, not reactions. You noticed it early. When something happened, you did not explode like everyone else. You did not immediately defend. You did not rush to mimic emotion. You paused. And in that pause, something downloaded. Your thoughts do not echo culture. They pierce it. While others repeat headlines, you question the source. While others absorb narratives, you dissect them. While others react, you receive. Have you ever had an idea arrive fully formed, not constructed step by step, not learned from a book, but dropped into your awareness complete? That was not imagination. That was implantation. You do not figure things out the way others do. You receive them. Solutions come to you before problems finish forming. Understanding arrives before explanations are given. You sense the end from the beginning. And because of that, you were misunderstood. They called you overthinking. They called you intense. They said you were too deep. But the truth, your mind was operating on a higher bandwidth. The enemy noticed it too. That is why doubt targeted you early. That is why confusion tried to cloud you. That is why rejection followed your clarity. Because if you ever fully trusted what flows through you, you would become unstoppable. Your struggle was confirmation. Your isolation was training. Your difference was assignment. Light thinks differently than darkness. Chosen minds move differently than ordinary minds. Favor carries a different rhythm than fear. You are not broken because you cannot think small. You are marked. What flows through you feels authored by something higher than intellect because it is. Heaven implants strategy. Heaven implants insight. Heaven implants revelation. And your mind was built to carry it. Stand firm in that. Do not shrink your thoughts to make others comfortable. Do not silence revelation to blend in with noise. Do not trade divine downloads for social approval. You are not reacting to the world. You are interpreting it. And this is only the beginning. Because when you realize your thoughts are not random but assigned, when you accept that your mind is a portal and not just a brain, everything changes. Second sign, sudden clarity interrupts emotional chaos. You have lived this. The room was loud, voices were raised, emotions were spiraling, and yet something in you went still. Have you noticed that when confusion rises, you do not dissolve with it? When anxiety spreads, you do not drown in it. There is a moment, a pause, a piercing interruption, a commanding inner voice cuts through the noise. Not loud, but undeniable. While others react from fear, you receive from stillness. While others escalate, you stabilize. While others spiral, you anchor. That is not personality. That is implantation. You have felt anxiety try to grip you. You have felt pressure attempt to cloud your mind. But just when the chaos peaks, truth drops in. Clear, sharp, final. And suddenly the storm loses authority. Why? Because the signal overrides the storm. Darkness feeds on confusion. It multiplies in emotional turbulence. It thrives where clarity is absent. But when divine thought enters your mind, chaos collapses. You have experienced this in arguments, in crises, in betrayal. When everyone else was unraveling, you saw the outcome before it unfolded. You knew how it would end. You sensed who was shifting. You perceived what others could not articulate. That foresight unsettled people. They wondered how you were so calm. They mistook your stability for coldness. They called you detached, but you were not detached. You were connected. Connected to a frequency higher than the moment. Connected to a truth deeper than emotion. Connected to revelation that refuses to panic. Understand this. The enemy tries to overwhelm your nervous system because he knows your clarity is dangerous. If he can flood you with fear, he can interrupt the download. If he can exhaust you emotionally, he can distort the signal. That is why your warfare often begins in the mind. That is why pressure increases before breakthrough. But look at the pattern. Every time chaos rose, clarity followed. Every time confusion surrounded you, a decisive thought pierced through. Every time darkness tried to intimidate you, truth stood up inside you. Your calm was not weakness, it was authority. You were not numb, you were tuned in. Chosen one, your mind was designed to carry command, not confusion. When truth downloads into your spirit, anxiety collapses because it cannot compete with certainty. Fear trembles in the presence of revelation. Emotional storms lose power when divine clarity speaks. You are not just surviving chaos, you are interrupting it. And this is only the second sign. Because if clarity can silence storms within you, imagine what happens when it begins to silence storms around you. Third sign. Your thoughts expose darkness in rooms you enter. You have felt it. You walk into a space and before anyone speaks, you already know. The energy shifts. Your chest tightens. Your spirit scans. You perceive motives before words are formed. Someone smiles, but something in you resists. Someone agrees, but something in you questions. Someone flatters, but something in you discerns. And you cannot explain it logically. You just know. Have you ever noticed how lies feel heavy to you? Not just wrong, heavy, as if the air thickens. As if your body registers what your ears have not yet heard. That is not suspicion. That is sensitivity to frequency. Your mind functions like spiritual radar, constantly scanning, constantly reading between lines, constantly detecting what hides beneath the surface. While others accept what is presented, you perceive what is concealed. While others are charmed by performance, you are alerted by undertones. While others trust quickly, you test spiritually. And because of that, you were labeled. They called you guarded. They called you skeptical. They said you overanalyze people. But the truth, you were discerning spirits. Darkness hates exposure, and you expose it without trying. You do not need proof. You feel patterns. You sense inconsistencies. You recognize misalignment before evidence surfaces. That made some uncomfortable. You have watched people avoid eye contact when you speak. You have seen defensiveness rise around you for no reason. You have felt resistance from those who carry hidden agendas. Why? Because light reveals what darkness tries to hide. And when your mind enters a room, concealment weakens. Understand this. The enemy will try to convince you that your discernment is paranoia. He will try to dull your perception with self-doubt. He will whisper, "You're imagining things." But you are not imagining. You are detecting. Only the chosen recognize this pattern. Not everyone carries this radar. Not everyone is wired to read unseen frequencies. Your isolation was training for this. Your betrayals sharpened this. Your past wounds refined your detection system. Every time you were blindsided, your discernment grew stronger. Every time you ignored your intuition and paid the price, you learned to trust it deeper. Your struggle was calibration. You were not cursed with sensitivity. You were entrusted with insight. And here is the escalation. When your thoughts expose darkness in a room, you are not just perceiving. You are disrupting. Hidden agendas cannot thrive long around you. Manipulation begins to unravel. False alliances begin to tremble. You carry an anointing that makes secrecy uncomfortable. Stand firm in that. Do not shrink your awareness to make others comfortable. Do not silence your inner alarm to avoid tension. Do not betray your discernment to fit in. You are not here to blend with darkness. You are here to reveal it. And if your mind already functions as radar, what happens when it becomes a transmitter? Fourth sign, isolation became the gateway for mental transmission. You did not choose the separation at first. People fell away. Conversations thinned out. Invitations stopped coming. And you wondered why. You questioned yourself. You replayed scenarios. You asked, did I change? Yes, you did, but not in the way you feared. When relationships fell away, revelation increased. When noise disappeared, clarity intensified. When the crowd withdrew, the signal grew stronger. Silence became louder than crowds. Have you noticed that in rooms full of people, you felt drained, but alone? Something opened. Thoughts deepened. Insight sharpened. Downloads accelerated. What felt like loneliness was actually alignment. Darkness isolates to weaken, but heaven isolates to strengthen. There is a difference. The world isolates you through rejection. God isolates you through refinement. The enemy wanted you to interpret it as abandonment, but it was divine encryption, information too powerful for distraction, strategy too sacred for casual company, instruction too precise for crowded rooms. You were not being removed because you were unworthy. You were being repositioned because you were marked. Only the chosen endure this phase. Ordinary minds need constant validation. Chosen minds require sacred silence. You thought you were losing people, but you were gaining transmission. Loneliness transformed into a training chamber. You started hearing more clearly, feeling more deeply, perceiving more accurately, and it scared you at first. Because when silence amplifies thought, there is nowhere to hide. You confronted fears. You faced shadows. You wrestled internal warfare. That was not punishment, that was preparation. In isolation, your mind was calibrated. In separation, your discernment was sharpened. In quiet, your portal widened. The enemy tried to convince you that being alone meant being forgotten. But the truth, you were being upgraded. Not everyone can handle isolation without losing themselves. But you did not lose yourself. You found yourself. You found your authority. You found your mental strength. You found your spiritual endurance. Isolation stripped you of dependency on applause. It stripped you of emotional crutches. It stripped you of noise. And what remained signal, clear, direct, undiluted. Understand this. If you had stayed surrounded by distraction, you would have never recognized the implantation. If you had remained constantly affirmed by others, you would have doubted the source. Silence forced you to listen. And now your mind does not need validation to stand firm. You survived the quiet. You endured the distance. You came out sharper, stronger, more dangerous to darkness. Because once a chosen one learns to thrive in isolation, nothing external can control their frequency. And if isolation was only the gateway, then what comes when the warfare escalates inside the mind itself? Fifth sign. Warfare intensifies around your thinking. This is where it became undeniable. You noticed it. The moment a powerful idea formed in your mind, resistance followed. Not outside first, inside. Intrusive doubts, sudden fear, unexpected insecurity. Have you ever had clarity about your next move? And within hours, your confidence was attacked. That is not coincidence. That is targeting. The enemy does not waste energy fighting thoughts that lead nowhere. He attacks the ones that carry destiny. When you begin thinking bigger, doubt whispers louder. When you sense elevation, anxiety tries to anchor you. When breakthrough is close, mental noise increases. Why? Because your thoughts are not neutral. They are blueprints. Darkness understands something many people do not. If your thinking stays aligned, your future cannot be stopped. So the attack begins at the source. Before circumstances change, your confidence is tested. Before doors open, your belief is shaken. Before alignment manifests, your identity is challenged. You felt the spike. The night before a major decision, the week before a new opportunity, the moment you step closer to your assignment, mental battles intensified. Suddenly, old insecurities resurfaced. Old memories replayed. Old voices echoed. You're not ready. Who do you think you are? This is too big for you. But listen carefully. If it were truly too big for you, there would be no warfare. Ordinary thoughts are ignored. Chosen thoughts are contested. The level of resistance reveals the level of impact. You were never under attack because you were weak. You were under attack because you were aligned. That anxiety you felt, it was the enemy trying to disrupt transmission, that confusion, an attempt to scramble the signal, that sudden heaviness, a last-minute effort to make you retreat. But you did not retreat. You wrestled. You questioned. You fought internally. And you stood. Even when your mind felt like a battlefield, something deeper refused to surrender. That is power awareness. You are not just surviving mental warfare. You are carrying thoughts that threaten darkness. The enemy targets your confidence before your circumstances because confidence activates movement. And movement activates destiny. If he can make you doubt, he can delay you. If he can delay you, he can slow impact. But he cannot stop what is implanted. Understand this. Every mental battle you survived increased your authority. Every doubt you overcame strengthened your alignment. Every time you chose truth over fear, you fortified your portal. You are not crazy for experiencing internal warfare. You are commissioned. The intensity proves importance. Stand firm in your thoughts. Guard them. Protect them. Because the very ideas that are attacked the hardest are the ones assigned to change your life. And if warfare increases before breakthrough, then what happens when instruction arrives that defies logic itself? Sixth sign. You receive instructions that defy logic yet produce results. This is where it becomes undeniable. You have been told to move before proof appeared. You have felt led before confirmation arrived. You have acted before understanding fully formed. And somehow, it worked. Have you ever stepped out on something that made no sense to others? No spreadsheet, no applause, no guarantee, just an inner command. Clear, firm, unshakable. Obedience often came before understanding. You did not always know why. You did not always see how, but you felt when, and that timing was precise. While others waited for visible evidence, you moved by invisible conviction. While the world demanded logic, you followed alignment. While fear asked for certainty, faith required action. And when you followed that inner instruction, doors opened unnaturally fast, not slowly, not accidentally, fast. Opportunities aligned, resources appeared, conversations shifted in your favor. It startled you because it confirmed something deeper. The strategy implanted in you was not random thought. It was divine orchestration. The enemy wants you frozen in analysis. He wants you paralyzed by overthinking. He wants you waiting for conditions to be perfect. But divine implantation does not always come wrapped in logic. It comes wrapped in authority. You have experienced it. A nudge to call someone, a sudden urge to leave something behind, an unexplainable peace about a risky move. And when you obeyed, breakthrough followed. Not everyone can live like that. Not everyone can hear that clearly. Not everyone can trust that deeply. Only the chosen recognize this pattern. You were never reckless. You were responsive. There is a difference. Recklessness ignores wisdom. Responsiveness follows revelation, and revelation carries protection. That is why even when the move looked dangerous, you were covered. Even when the step looked uncertain, you were sustained. Even when others predicted failure, you saw favor. Because you were not operating from guesswork, you were following instruction. Understand this. If your mind were only your own, those risks would have crushed you. If those ideas were purely human, those leaps would have collapsed. But they did not, because the strategy implanted in you outruns conventional logic. You are not wired for ordinary navigation. You are guided by unseen coordinates. Light moves differently than the world. Chosen minds respond to signals others cannot hear. Trust that. Do not dilute your obedience to make it palatable. Do not silence your instinct to satisfy skeptics. Do not wait for validation when you already have direction. The results already prove the source. And if instructions have been guiding your steps, what happens when you begin seeing not just your own path, but the trajectories of others? Seventh sign, you are given insight into people's futures, including your own. This is where it becomes undeniable. You do not just read moments. You sense trajectories. You meet someone, and you already know how their story unfolds. You hear someone speak, and you see the pattern beneath their words. You observe small behaviors, and you foresee large consequences. Have you ever watched someone celebrate something and felt a quiet warning inside? Have you ever seen someone struggle and sense their coming elevation before it appeared? You sense who will rise. You sense who will fall. Not because you judge, but because you perceive patterns before they manifest publicly. Darkness moves in cycles. Light reveals cycles. and your mind has been trained to detect repetition before it becomes reality. You have watched events unfold exactly as you sensed they would. Friendships dissolving, careers collapsing, unexpected promotions, sudden shifts, and you were not surprised. Others called it coincidence. But you knew, because divine thought bends time. When revelation enters your awareness, you do not experience life only in the present. You glimpse direction, you glimpse outcome, you glimpse consequence, and sometimes it unsettles you, because knowing ahead of time carries weight. You tried to ignore it at times. You tried to dismiss your foresight as imagination. You tried to downplay what you felt, but the pattern kept proving itself. You were not guessing, you were receiving. And here is the deeper layer. Your own life has always felt pre-written, not controlled, but orchestrated. Have you ever stepped into a moment and felt like you had been there before? Not physically, but internally, as if you were remembering more than discovering, as if destiny was unfolding along a script your spirit already recognized. That is not fantasy, that is implantation. Only the chosen feel this tension between present and future. Only the marked sense the weight of something larger guiding their timeline. The enemy tried to confuse you about it, tried to make you question your perception, tried to convince you that you were overreaching. But every fulfilled intuition strengthened your confidence. Every accurate foresight fortified your authority. You are not just reacting to life, you are anticipating it. That makes you dangerous to darkness. Because when you can see patterns before they mature, you can disrupt them. When you sense collapse before it happens, you can reposition. When you glimpse elevation before it arrives, you can prepare. Stand firm in that awareness. Do not shrink your foresight. Do not silence your perception. Do not apologize for seeing further than others. Time bends when divine thought enters your awareness. And if you can see where things are going, what happens when your mind begins resisting the programming of the world itself? Eighth sign, your mind resists programming from the world. This is where the separation becomes undeniable. You have noticed it. Trends sweep across culture. Fear floods timelines. Outrage spreads like wildfire. And yet, something in you does not move. You watch the hysteria, you observe the panic, you see the emotional contagion, but it does not stick. Have you ever wondered why collective fear fails to infect you the way it infects others? Why narratives that grip millions feel hollow to you? Why you instinctively pause when the world demands immediate reaction? It is not rebellion, it is immunity. Spiritual immunity. Your mind was fortified before you even knew it. While others absorb what they are told, you test it. While others surrender to group emotion, you analyze the source. While others echo the loudest voice, you search for the hidden agenda. That resistance cost you. You were called stubborn. You were labeled difficult. You were accused of being contrarian. But you were never fighting people. You were resisting programming. Darkness works through repetition, through constant exposure, through emotional manipulation. It aims to overwrite thought patterns, to implant fear, to normalize limitation. But your mind rejects what is not aligned. You feel it instantly. When something is exaggerated, you sense distortion. When something is weaponized, you detect pressure. When something is engineered to control, you resist internally. Not because you are defiant, because you are protected. Chosen minds cannot be easily rewritten. You have tried to fit in at times, tried to adopt popular perspectives, tried to agree for the sake of peace, but something in you would not settle. It felt wrong, heavy, misaligned. That discomfort was not social awkwardness. It was spiritual preservation. The enemy cannot dominate what he cannot reprogram, and he cannot reprogram a mind anchored in implanted truth. You are not easily swayed, not easily intimidated, not easily silenced. Fear-based narratives do not stick because fear does not rule you. You operate from revelation, not reaction, from discernment, not pressure, from alignment, not approval. Stand firm in that. Do not apologize for questioning. Do not dilute your discernment to avoid tension. Do not surrender your clarity for the comfort of the crowd. Light cannot be conditioned into darkness. And you were not built to be conditioned. You were built to carry signal. That is why attempts to intimidate you failed. Why manipulation exhausted itself around you. Why collective hysteria never fully owned you. You are spiritually resistant, and if your mind cannot be programmed by the world, then imagine what happens when you realize it was never meant to merely resist, but to invade. Ninth sign. You realize your thoughts are not just for you, they are weapons. This is the sealing revelation. You began by thinking you were simply different. Then you realized you were discerning. Then you saw the warfare. But now you understand something heavier. What enters your mind is not private, it is strategic. Have you ever spoken something that shifted the entire room? One sentence, one observation, one truth, and suddenly the atmosphere changed. That was not charisma, that was authority. What enters your mind is meant to shift atmospheres. You are not receiving revelation for entertainment. You are not carrying insight for decoration. You are being armed. Your clarity destabilizes systems built on deception. Darkness survives through confusion, through silence, through compliance. But when you speak what was implanted, chains break around others. You have seen it. Someone trapped in doubt hears you and stands taller. Someone drowning in fear listens to you and finds courage. Someone bound by lies encounters your words and feels something snap. That is not coincidence. That is impact. The warfare has been relentless because your mind is not passive, it is invasive. A chosen mind is a portal heaven uses to invade earth. Read that again inside yourself. Heaven invades through you. That is why distraction was heavy. That is why isolation was intense. That is why doubt was aggressive. The enemy was not fighting your comfort. He was fighting your influence. If he could silence your thoughts, he could delay liberation for others. If he could make you question your voice, he could preserve deception. If he could exhaust your mind, he could protect darkness. But he failed. You are still here, still thinking, still discerning, still speaking. You are not fragile. You are fortified. Your mind is not chaotic. It is commissioned. Stand up in that awareness. Guard your thoughts. Refine your voice. Speak when instructed. Move when directed. You are not just surviving spiritual warfare. You are advancing light. You are chosen, fully awakened, spiritually protected, divinely assigned. Every rejection sharpened you. Every battle strengthened you. Every lonely night prepared you. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. You were being trained to carry weight. So when the warfare intensifies, do not retreat. When opposition rises, do not shrink. When doubt whispers, do not negotiate. You are a portal, and portals do not close because of pressure. They open wider. If this message confirmed what you have always felt, type 9 in the comments. Seal it, declare it. Subscribe if you are ready to continue walking in clarity. Because this is not the end of revelation. This is the activation. You were never ordinary. You were never accidental. You were implanted with purpose. And no force formed against a chosen mind can override divine design.